we'll see what bright everything will probably go smoothly today because everything up until this point has just went haywire for me all day. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe luck will turn on the when we start the radio show today. And as soon as Jesse, I think he's just about ready to kick the music, and we'll join Facebook Live on this as we usually do. That funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5 on IE Newswire, both on Facebook and YouTube as we go along on this Whatever Can Go Wrong Will Go Wrong Wednesday. On that, just seems like everything I've touched today just has turned to crapiola on that, but hey, maybe the old radio show will turn everything around, and we'll do that. So I haven't done much with the news today, so we'll just kind of soldier through. We'll have a segment coming up with Stephanie at the bottom of the hour. Susan Shelley will join us to I don't know. We'll discuss. I don't even know what column she wrote this week on and stuff. But I mean, it's all whatever's going on. I mean, the whole COVID, whatever it is on the situation going on, and we're always doing stuff of that, and it just seems like, I equated it to taking. It seems like we take one step forward in this whole thing, and then we take 2 steps or 3 steps or 47 times across the board. It just seems like no matter what happens, they move, ever increasingly they're moving the goalposts. First we were started off, the coronavirus, nothing to worry about. Started with Fauci and all the guys at the World Health Organization. They were jumping up and down when Trump put the travel ban on China going across, and, Nancy Pelosi and de Blasio, the mayor in New York, and the mayor in San Francisco, because there's big Chinatowns in there, and it was getting to their Chinese New Year's celebration or some darn thing going on at the first of the year. They were jumping all over Trump. Racist. You can't ban people from coming into the country. Yada, yada. The whole thing started like that. And then started breaking out. Italy started having a big problem with it. Spain, I think, started breaking out other than China. And you started going in Europe, the UK, and then we had the studies of 2 million could die in America, 1 million in California in March, and the lockdowns and the whole thing. And I mean, so then we get to March, and okay, we're stay-at-home orders, on and on and on. To slow the curve because we don't want our hospitals overwhelmed, because there could be millions of people die. Da-da-da-da-da. As I keep saying, most of the time, a couple of times they slipped and said, well, stop the spread. Most of the time they just said we're going to slow the spread. But they never said it was going to decrease cases or deaths. Cases, they said it may decrease deaths because we're, if our hospital system overwhelms and we can't take care of patients, we have to turn them away or yada, 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 other people may die. That never happened. I don't think there's a case in the United States of America, and if anybody knows of one, let me know. But I don't think there's a case where somebody was turned away from COVID. In fact, because of COVID and our hospitals being empty, and you still drive by them today. I don't know, if you drove by any hospitals lately, they're like ghost towns. You look at the parking lot, yeah, Jesse's giving me enough. You look at the parking lot, nobody's there. This has been going on, for 4 or 5 months now? They reopened and all this stuff. But you go back and forth with this stuff, and So our hospitals are not only not overwhelmed, they're being underutilized. I mean, we're at 60 something percent occupancy rate in California. And as I think Dr. Kelly Victory said one time in the show, hospitals are built to have 85, 90% of their beds occupied. That's how they make money. That's how they stay in business. That's how they be able to stay in business to take care of us. But still, we're killing that, and you do that. And so now we move into that, and we kind of started reopening the economy, and things were looking a little better. Maybe we're getting through this, and then all of a sudden, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Here's all this coming again. Locking down, we're all going to die again. That cases are going up. Again, back to the deal. AIDS is a coronavirus. Lots of your common colds are the coronavirus. Lots of flus are subsets of the coronavirus. They've never had a vaccine ever that has been effective against a coronavirus. Not even Fauci, and that was his big claim to fame as AIDS research. And what's that been going on 25, 30 years ago? Back in, what was it, 92, Magic Johnson and the Lakers had HIV. He was getting along. That's 25, 26, 7 years, 28 years ago. So, yeah, about 30 years ago. He's been studying this on that. I can't emphasize this enough. Stop listening to the lies, the hyperbole, the hysterical fear-mongering that's going on. The whole thing about masks, don't wear them. Well, they may protect you from this, and they may protect you from, they won't protect you, but they will protect you from spreading it in case you're asymptomatic to, oh, well, now we think it may protect you to what no, masks are the cure, all that. Notice again, they never say it's going to stop the spread. They say it's going to slow the spread. So if it slows the spread, that just means it's going to take place over a longer period of time. I don't know what else to, I don't know how else to say this or emphasize it. Or even what I can't wrap my head around a lot of times is why everybody, not everybody, wrong word, shouldn't use that, why the vast majority of the people gave up so quickly. I mean, now it's like, masks are the big, that, da-da-da-da. Karen Spiegel, we brought out yesterday, a supervisor, Riverside County, 2nd District, Corona, east end of Riverside, Norco, all in that area, basic like that. Said for 30 days, and I hadn't hardly seen anybody who had masks, everything else is getting got coronavirus. I don't know how I tried to do everything right. Stood up there and the supervisors, even when Kevin Jeffries and Jeff Hewitt took their masks off, still with the mask on and all that other stuff. And there it is. You look at it. I don't know. I just don't, I don't know if the vast majority of this country has just completely lost their balls or what. There is nothing, there is very, 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 very infinitesimal amount to be fearing of this whole thing for the vast majority of the people. What, like 90% of the deaths are like in 0.0002% of the population. to continue to torture the people of the United States of America with this stuff is criminal, in my opinion. It's probably even more criminal than letting the that was strange. I don't know if you guys heard it, but there's a weird sounds coming through. No, it's absolutely incredible that we're allowing this. It's even more damaging, I think, to than even the property destruction or the Portland situations or the rioting and all that stuff of that. Because if you come to accept this stuff, as I've said, the United States as you knew it is not going to exist. You're not going to be a free people. You're not going to go out there to seek opportunity. You're going to be told what, where, and how to go. I mean, I see the Orange County Board of Education is suing, just heard that today, they are suing the state of California to allow Orange County to open up the schools. There is no, even Redfield, the CDC director, which is even touting the mask thing now, is saying we need to figure out how to get kids back in school. The amount of damage we're doing to their education in this lockdown far, far, far outweighs the risk of anybody dying of COVID-19 in the school system. So we need to come up when the CDC release guidelines, and you need to figure that stuff out. So it's something that we, it just, but I guess the biggest thing that bothers me is just the vast majority of Americans, how quickly they've just conformed to the BS that's going out there. When that would have, there should be rioting in the streets, not about systemic racism or any of this other BS. Should be rioting in the streets about what our government is doing to us. And we all know First Amendment, Second Amendment, they were all put in there to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government taking over your lives. And it seems like we're going to be in that phase that tyrannical government is going to take over our lives. And it's just driving me nuts. We're going to switch topics a little bit, talk about a lot of stuff. Stephanie's going to join us. We're going to talk about moms, and there's been a lot of studies and new studies out about are the first are our first children more favored, or how that all works, and the conclusions of the study may surprise you. So here we go with that. Enjoy a little bit of break from the Monday news of the day. Here we go. Came across a real interesting article today because there's been a lot of studies between parents and moms and kids, and go back to the old Tommy and Dick Smothers brother, mom like me best routine that was very famous.
Well, we all know who the favorite is in my family, but
we're aiming to find out. And there was a real interesting study that did that, and it was on Pocket Worthy on that. Firstborn children really are treated differently by mom. So I wanted to just run that. I wanted to get your initial reaction that firstborn children really are treated differently by mom. What's your first reaction?
So I'm the youngest. My sister's obviously the oldest, and we always go back and forth out of 5 of us. She claims that she's my mom's favorite because she's the firstborn. And she says that too. Firstborns are always treated different. But you know what? I really think they are. Not because of the child itself, but I think just because it's that parent's first experience, and firsts are always more...
You're getting kind of perceptive, which is making me kind of nervous on this thing.
But I'm still the favorite, and I'm the baby. So I think between the firstborn and the baby,
we're getting into the hole again, and we don't learn to stop digging. When you started off, they're really good in doing that, and then you.
But no, I do think firstborns. I think they are treated. They're absolutely treated different.
It is, 100%. And then the next part. That's why I didn't put this up, because the next part is. But it's not because she likes you better.
Wow.
See,
damn, I'm getting good.
If you would have stopped there at the first one,
Well, I'm just throwing out there that I'm the favorite.
U.S. National Institutes of Health has dedicated considerable resources to investigating one of the more infuriating aspects of growing up with siblings, the nagging sensation that your siblings get preferential treatment. The takeaway from the new study suggests your siblings are justified. Mom does treat each of her multiple children differently, but it's probably not because you were firstborn or second. Motivated by the gap in the literature, it comes to the social and emotional dynamics of moms and siblings, a team of child experts in child development at the NIH, headed by Mark Bornstein, PhD. The retired head of NIH Child and Family Research Division applied some scientific rigor to those anecdotal feelings of inequity. The research published in the Social Development shows there are significant differences in mom interacts with each of her two children, but they're not differences in preference.
I think that does hit it spot on, because with my kids, I have 4, and each of them are different. And I treat each of them, you got to treat them all differently if they're all different, right?
Well, yeah, that would become that. But, it's the age-old argument that the firstborn or what gets treated preferentially, like it said, of that, but it's not exactly of what
I think the baby gets spoiled the most.
What it was. Putnam quantified these interactions by observing 2 hours of interactions between 55 mothers and their firstborn children when kids were 20 months old. With those tapes in the archives, she then returned years later when a second siblings were born and reached 20 months of age. What emerged was from the scientific version of your most embarrassing child home videos, played and replayed by a team of cognition experts. They found that mothers were consistent in their attitudes about parenting. For instance, they tend to have the same values even after having a second child, which Putnick calls socio-emotional parenting cognition. But when it came to putting those values into practice, things usually tended to vary by child, which she calls social-emotional parenting practices. So it looks like from the study, your values are the way you have set up in your head how you do it. But after that second child, which makes sense, you adjust, redo it, because obviously you have a more experience. You're getting
exactly
to it of that on
and
that.
I think that goes with, like, most parents will buy name brand diapers, name brand formula, name brand juices, and then when that third child comes along, you don't.
So now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of it. So while moms tried to apply the same parenting rationale to both their kids, it really didn't work out in application. Mothers engaged in 15% more play with older children, and younger siblings received roughly 4% more praise and 9% more physical affection. Putnick, however, is careful to highlight these differences are far from universal. So when you look at that, it seems like the first kid, on average, gets more playtime, but the second kid gets more emotional support.
Yeah. I think the first kid gets it all. I don't think there's anything left out with the first one, because but by the time you get the second one, you're then having to take care of the first one, and now you have the second one on top of it. I think the time just gets kind of spread thin between each child.
Now, here's more nuts and bolts, and it kind of backs up a little bit, I think, what she said earlier. Interesting, these results show that it isn't actually birth order that causes the difference in mother's treatment between her children. Instead, these researchers believe that it really comes down to the personality of each child, which, to make this even more curious, is affected by birth order. This study shows that the firstborn children are more sociable than second-born children, which Putnick suggests might be due to years of undivided attention before the sibling is born. Silence.
Yeah, I'm trying to take it all in. I don't know. But it backs up everything that I'm saying. I think that by the time you keep having more kids, your time spread thin. But I think that as you grow too, the parents, obviously the mother's getting older and then sees parenting way differently. I know when I had my first versus when I had my fourth, life was way different, and how I thought of my children were different. Not that I love them any more or less, but things that I found were more important, I wish I would have done with my first, I did with my fourth.
Ultimately, it might be differences in personality due to birth order that led mom to adapt to different parenting styles, which each child, says Putnick, and these might explain why some moms engaged in more play with older siblings and younger one. I think that maternal practices differ between the two siblings because each individual children have unique characteristics, she explains. So it seems like parents who treat their kids the same might be fighting an uphill battle, not against birth order, but against personalities in children.
Exactly.
Which is always...
Because it goes back to, Kian's way different than Liam.
Which goes back to what I've said. It's the environment you're brought up in is what shapes you. And as you kind of segued into what I was thinking, is each kid is brought up in a different environment. Like you said, mom has more experience, different this, said, okay, wish I would have done that, the first one, the second one, third, da-da-da. And then as people are, they're different personalities. They've taken...
And these studies come out so often that I know when I was having my kids, those parenting magazines were my best friend, and on the web too. So many things change. Like, you're doing this with your older child, and they're like, oh no, don't do that, do it this way instead. So I think that, but you should always have that base foundation of how you want your children to be raised. Always have them make sure they have respect, manners, and all that, but then you still got to cater to the personality on which they're going to learn that.
Which kind of goes to my theory of it, and they've taken, like, say like identical twins that have been, separated at birth, adopted out, or whatever on that.
Right.
And raised in two completely different environments.
Right.
And they're like, even though they may look a lot alike each other, they're two, like, totally different people.
Right.
Because they were, because of that scenario. Totally, completely different households, different people around, da-da-da-da. I've said people are predisposed physically and stuff to that. Like I said, I would never play middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Not big enough, strong enough, would never do that. There's a physical, it's not that kind of the old saying, you can be anything you want to be. Well, everybody has physical limitations of this, or limitations of some kind. But those are very minor, I think, to the environment you were brought up in, and what that's what shapes you, in my view, like 98.7% of the time, is the experiences, the environment, what you did, maybe what you didn't do, and stuff like that.
Right.
That's what really makes or breaks you. And it goes to kind of the thing we've been talking about with the education here with the COVID thing, and the kids learning almost half a school year, and maybe a whole school year on this. What is the, nobody has said this is going to be a good effect on that, and especially for those, I would say, let's say elementary school on down, because like they've said, I've seen studies, you learn like 80 or 90% of what you ever learned before the age of 5.
Yeah.
And things are much easier.
Personality is developed by then.
It's much easier to teach someone 5 or 6 years old another language than somebody 50 years old.
Right.
You soak that in. The older you get, the more you adapt your personality or whatever your experience is. You do that, and you get into a routine in that. Where a kid or younger, let's say 10 and under, they're like sponges. They're just soaking everything in. They don't have predisposed notions of way this is supposed to be in that, so they're more open to it and everything. And this is what concerns me, and this is kind of why I thought the study was interesting, because it kind of knocks the myth down that the firstborn is the favorite child, scenario.
I gotta send this one to my sister.
Of that. Or, like I said, the Smothers Brothers thing of the old routine of that, mom likes me best, and they had the whole comedy routine about that.
Right.
But it is, and I think that, and then, to segue it into what's going on today, that's what I think, especially parents of school-age kids, of going on, is, man, you should be thumping the doors down of all your government agencies that got these schools closed down. 4 months is long enough.
Yeah, definitely. Because they're definitely doing, they do already do that summer slide where they, that's what we call it. for the 2 months that we're out. Imagine
Yeah,
4 months plus. Now they're saying the end of October now, maybe.
Well, yeah, you can.
Like that's way too long.
I can almost. I would bet dimes to donuts we're going to be. If it's going to be 2021 before you're going to see mass school
Especially for
openings.
those poor children, like my kids, they have a great support system between family and friends, and like you know, they have that. But for all the children that don't have that, and there's so many just in our district, it's heartbreaking. It really is.
And it is to me for that because, and a lot of times in kids that. Take from generations past, that is their only interaction because they go home and they play video games. They don't go outside and play and do all the things, that kids did in the past. So their only social interaction with other people are getting outside or having recess or being able to
food,
play
lunch,
playing dodgeball or
breakfast.
tag or whatever on that, going outside, running up and down the monkey bars or whatever. Those are only opportunities.
Not running.
Climbing.
Sorry. Those are the only opportunities.
Yes. but that was their only opportunity to do that, of that, because, for whatever, not getting into the who's and why for's a why, but they just didn't. And now that's taking away from them for the most part.
Right.
And a lot of them. And again, it's going to have a profound effect of what's going on in the future. And that's what I say, going back to this, and I think this study kind of backs it up. It's the environment you're in, good, bad, indifferent, in between anything else is what's going to shape you.
Right.
And that's what I think moving forward, I think this should be a big time concern of what parents because whether you're a parent or not, it's going to have a profound effect in the future of how society goes. If we have a education gap in amongst students in this particular run, it's going to reflect not only in their future but decades down the road. You're going to see this, and that story's not going to end well if we let it continue.
Exactly. I agree with you. Still think the baby's the favorite, but
30 seconds.
No, but I think a lot of parents, though, nowadays, I think they're getting lazy. Parents aren't parenting like they used to. Parents are befriending their kids. They're not parenting them. They're friends with them.
Boy, is that opening up a whole new can of worms.
I'm telling you, they are, though.
That's it. Well, maybe.
They really are.
Maybe.
There's a lot of social media where me and my best friend. No.
Here we go.
Timmy
10
is not your best friend. He's your freaking child. He'll be your friend when he's 18.
And download your free phone app today. IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMED, its management, parties, or affiliates.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday on the Mighty Vet. 1490 KMET, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire. And as we start live at 5, we're broadcasting all across the world. You can get us on the World Wide Web on Facebook Live and YouTube at IE Newswire, where we start. Had an interesting discussion. I thought that study was fun on that. That's why we discussed a little bit of that about, how each child ranks on that and, all that. And the conclusions, some of it came like some of the standard operating procedure, but some of it was pretty insightful on how that stuff works. And a lot of it made sense on that. So something different to divert us from all the mundane lockdown, coronavirus, all that other noise that's going on that keeps our time occupied all across the board. We covered it, and we haven't talked a little bit about it, and we'll have Susan Shelley on here in a couple of minutes. But James Patrick Riley owns Riley's Farms up in Oak Glen, there between Yucaipa, up in the mountains between Yucaipa and Beaumont, Cherry Valley area. has a really nice farm, and an apple season and all that. Well, he has, he brings kids out field trips, and they reenact like 1776. And before even all this started, one of the school districts pulled it over something he said or wrote on the media. Well, he sued the school districts for pulling the field trips and all that stuff. The judge just dismissed the case, saying that he had not established, that his First Amendment rights were violated. So we'll see if he's going to appeal. We'll see if we can get James Patrick Riley on to see where the next version of this goes, or what he's going to do with that. But as usual, we have our very special guest we usually have on once a week to discuss her great columns that she writes every week or so. A couple, usually two a week in the Press Enterprise, Redlands Daily Facts, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, and more important, and this is probably going to be one of the big topics of conversation from here moving till November, Vice President of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Welcome to iNewswire Daily with Roy, Susan, Shelley.
Thank you, Roy. It's great to be with you.
Most people don't say that, but we'll...
Oh, well, they're wrong. It is great to be with you.
Wow.
Every time.
I don't know how I'll be able to stand with this. But no, a couple of things before we get into your column about Prop 15 on that. We've been going through the up and down, the daily this and mask and all that. Just kind of want to get your general sense, because, we had the whole big bomb drop, in the first of the year, and then it looked like things were turning around, things were opening up, and then all of a sudden we got this big crash back again, shutting everything down. And we went from don't wear masks, no effect, to maybe they'll stop this. They won't protect you, but they'll stop the spread, to now masks are the all get all. Will give. They're like putting you in a hermetically sealed bubble. Nothing will happen to you. What do you make of all this?
I honestly have been thinking, is there like a good motive that could explain any of these terrible decisions? And the only thing I can think of, and I'm probably being a Pollyanna even to suggest that there's a good motive, I don't really think there is, but trying to think of one, it's difficult if you truly believe that you have to get the entire population to do something. It becomes very difficult to manage that. For example, if you want everyone to wear a mask, but you don't have enough masks, you have to make sure that people don't think they should wear a mask, so that they don't go out and stockpile everything that's needed for the medical workers. Because that's kind of what happened right at the beginning. People got all into this idea that some people were trying to make money off of it. They were trying to corner the market on masks. They were stockpiling supplies. People were stockpiling toilet paper. It was crazy at the beginning. So you have this sort of panic buying mentality. And I think some people in government were trying to lie to people publicly to keep them from taking those actions. Now, you can't really fool people about toilet paper. You can't say you don't need it. So that didn't work. But you can tell them that you shouldn't wear a mask. It doesn't do you any good. However, before COVID ever happened, there were several studies from these same people who are in public health saying universal masks don't help and may harm, because people fiddle with them, they don't wash them, they can be exhaling more of the virus through the mask, because it's not a respirator, it's not a high quality mask, it's just a piece of cloth. So the overwhelming amount of evidence is that requiring healthy people to wear masks all the time is a stupid idea. Nonetheless, we got to the point where they're trying to keep everybody really afraid, because people are going out and they're having parties and they're living their lives like normal people, and there's pressure to open businesses, pressure to open schools. So what's the good motive for universal masks, if there was one? Well, theoretically, if you really believe that people should stay in and not socialize, one way to make sure that they do that is to terrify them. Just leave people so scared to death all the time that they will not leave the house. if you make everyone outside wear a mask and you direct law enforcement resources to try to make people do that, everyone will be afraid because it's just scary to walk into a supermarket and see everybody with their face covered, and if you're not wearing one, people treat you like you have leprosy, and it's scary, and people are scared all the time. Now, the trouble with this policy of trying to keep people inside by scaring them to death is that being scared to death has a lot of negative consequences, individually and as a society. And one of them is you have depression, you have isolation, you have suicide, you have alcoholism, you have drug abuse, you have domestic violence, you have child abuse. You have kids who are not in school who need to be in school because the teachers are too afraid to go back to the classroom. Now, there I am being Pollyanna, saying they're too afraid. The truth is probably they're just using this, the unions are just using this as a bargaining opportunity to try and push through more tax increases so they can bargain for that money in their next contract. So I don't want to be Pollyanna, but the best possible spin you can put on it is that they are lying to people about everything in order to try to keep people afraid and control the population for what they consider to be the right reason. That's the best spin you can put on it. The worst spin is considerably worse than that. You don't need any help thinking of that.
No, and I mean that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And I say it a lot. Fear's, if not one of the most powerful motivators we have, and they've been using this to a T on this whole thing. And we even had Dr. Kelly Victory on yesterday. Said basically the same. People, because she's a trauma surgeon. Well, why do you wear a mask in surgery? She said that's a totally different environment. It is clean, and she said the only reason we're wearing masks is so I don't breathe something into a open wound or open surgery or something that somebody's doing something. It's not meant to protect everything going on in there, even when a surgeon is doing that and working in the hospital. So to equate that with the masks and all the things that it's just going to save us from everything, I don't get it. But you mentioned the tax increases, and we're going to have to deal with that again. We just dealt with it in March, and we did beat back the school bond. But Prop 15 on the November ballot is going to be the latest salvo, I should say, and probably the biggest salvo yet, I think, has been launched to try and roll back the protections that most of us enjoy under Prop 13, as in not getting us taxed out of our homes. Mm-hmm. There are no loopholes in Prop 13, as you write in your column. Explain why, Susan.
Well, every time you watch an interview with someone from the teachers union or one of these advocates for changing Prop 13, they always say that there's $12 billion that corporations have escaped paying through a loophole in Prop 13. And this is completely false. What he's talking about, the president of the CTA and the others who are using this loophole word, what they're talking about is something that's actually part of the state constitution and has been really since the 1800s. All property is taxed under the same rules and the same rates, no matter how it's used. So what Prop 13 did is it capped the annual rise in assessed value so that you weren't being taxed out of your house by inflation. 2% a year is as much as your assessed value can rise, and it cut the tax rate, which was 3% in some places in the state, cut the tax rate to 1%. That's what Prop 13 did for all property. What the advocates of higher taxes are trying to do is change that. They're not trying to fix a loophole, they're trying to change the law. And they can't say that because if they say we want to repeal part of Prop 13, people will freak out and vote no. Because nobody wants to repeal Prop 13 except the people who want to raise taxes. There's nothing wrong with Prop 13. It's better than all the alternatives. So what they talk about is the idea that corporations should be reassessed to market value for all their property. All business properties, with just a few exceptions, all business properties should be reassessed to market value constantly, like every 3 years at the outside, and sometimes more often. And then they should pay taxes 1% on the current market value. Well, think about what that does, just a typical business, a supermarket. that's been in your neighborhood for 30 years and the same ownership. If the property in your neighborhood is reassessed to market value, what happens to the prices in that supermarket?
Yes.
Up they go.
Yes.
What happens to the prices at a car dealership, which has been owned by the same ownership for a long time? Up it goes. What happens to office buildings, hotels, restaurants, the whole tourism industry, assuming it comes back? When people come to a convention in California, those hotels, those convention centers, those stadiums, those restaurants will be paying property taxes on the market value of the property, kept current by reassessment as values go up. It will be devastating. Devastating. Our taxes are already too high. It's already hard for businesses in California to compete. It's hard to compete with online. It's hard to compete with businesses in other states that will ship to California because the costs here are higher. So what's going to happen to the shopping malls and all the businesses that are in them? I mean, that's the last nail in the box. If the Attorney General wanted to title this accurately, he probably could have called it last nail in the box for businesses in California, and it would have passed any scrutiny from a court. Which reminds me, how many times have we talked about the deceptive way that Attorney General Becerra wrote that gas tax repeal, Prop 6?
Yes. They couldn't. I mean, this has been going on for decades, especially in California. They couldn't write any more dishonest ballot title measures out of the Attorney General's office in California than have been done in the last 20 years.
That's right. Well, I have good news for you, because the Prop 15, the split roll, this giant property tax increase, this is going to be on the ballot with a title that says increases funding sources for public schools. And the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association this afternoon filed a lawsuit against Attorney General Javier Becerra over this completely misleading and inaccurate ballot language that he has put together for Prop 15. So we will see him in court over this. This will not stand.
Yes, I hope so. I hope we can find an honest court somewhere that will start overturning some of this stuff, because it should be straightforward. This is going to increase taxes on businesses and commercial properties and so on and so forth in the state of California, and outline all the stuff. And as I've said many times, there is no such thing as a business tax. They are just tax collectors for the government. Exactly. You, the end consumer, pay that in the goods and services you buy every day. So the more you raise those taxes, the less money you're going to have in your wallet, whether they tax it at the business level or you personally in the 87 million ways they do it, or anyway. Ultimately, you pay that tax.
That's right. And when you talk about business formation, you have to look at the prospects that businesses are evaluating in every state when they decide where they're going to headquarter, where they're going to operate. It's true that if you raise taxes, if you do full socialism or full communism, you have about 10 years, maybe 20, where you can live on the surplus from the capitalist system you just ousted. Because you'll have a certain number of people who are trained in their professions, who already own or operate, probably just operate for the government, different kinds of businesses. But there's a ticking clock on that, because they're going to stop at some point. And then where are the new businesses going to be? Well, in California, they're going to be in Nevada. They're going to be somewhere else. All of our California businesses that will be starting in the next 10 years will not be starting. So all the kids who are in college, who are thinking about their careers, who are looking to California corporations as a source of jobs and good salaries, by the time they get out of school, those companies may be in New York, they may be in Wyoming. People can be anywhere, particularly in high-tech businesses. They can be anywhere and operate successfully. This is not the 19th century where you have to be near water and railroad tracks. You can be anywhere, and they will be. So it's the worst possible policy. it doesn't come to us from lawmakers who have to put their name on the ballot. It comes to us from public employee unions who want the money. They just flat out want the money. And they don't like to go into negotiations with the people they elected, the people that owe them, and hear from the other side of the table, well, we'd like to give it to you, but we just don't have it. So what they're doing is they're trying to raise taxes, and then if the politicians say, well, we just don't have it, they'll say, yes, you do. We just walked precincts and raised money to pass a tax increase, and it belongs to us. And that's the dynamic in California politics. That's why it is the way it is. The money never solves the problems that it's supposed to solve because it goes to salaries and benefits and post-retirement benefits for public employees. And this has been escalating since the late 1970s, which is when Jerry Brown signed legislation to allow public employees to go on strike and bargain collectively. For the first time, he signed those bills that allowed it, and every contract has been a little better than the last one ever since. And we are where we are because of that. And they blame Prop 13, which was also in the late 70s, but if you look at property tax revenue, it has climbed. If you look at school spending per pupil, it has climbed. It was something like $5,800 per student in the late 1970s, and now it's more than $11,000.
No.
That's inflation adjusted.
Okay, well, it could be. I would say that it would be more than that. It's $20,000 right now for every kid's K through that. They will not release the true numbers, but just on what they spend locally, take $6 million over $100 billion in that. That's $17,000 they're spending in the state, and then you add in all the local bonds. It's about $20,000 per student. So adjusted for inflation, it's got to be like that. If we ever knew the true numbers, there would be mass insurrection going on that. And I have yet to had one public official or government agency dispute what I've said. They all just try and bypass it, and they try and run. The numbers they give you are criminal.
Yes, well, you're right. They don't include bonds because they don't include facilities costs. They don't include post-retirement health benefits for former teachers and district workers. They don't include a number of other things that the schools wind up paying for in that cost of education and what they calculate as per pupil spending. And then some of the studies have used like a cost of living factor, which they pull out of the air, and they say, well, it costs more for teachers to live in California, therefore we're going to adjust the per pupil spending lower to account for that. Well, if this measure, Prop 15, were to pass, it's going to raise the cost of living, which means the way they do the math, we're never going to be ahead. Because no matter how much you pay the teachers, the cost of living is going up as a result of the tax increase. And they will continue to tell us that we're 40th or 50th or whatever in per pupil spending. They can make those numbers sit up and do pirouettes on a high wire. They're just dancing. So
exactly. And I wanted to pick up on one point about businesses moving away. And, as California shifted from a manufacturing base of the aerospace, in the 50s, 60s, 70s into the 80s, to the high-tech Silicon Valley stuff, I read a recent report, and I don't remember exactly, but, it included like Google, Facebook, and Apple Computer and all that, all the ones that are businesses up there in Silicon Valley. They're talking about only 10% of their workforce that was working before COVID coming back. And it backs up now that they're seeing this, people can work from home. That means if they can work from home, they don't have to live in the ungodly high-priced homes in the Bay Area. They could move to Nevada or Oregon or Idaho or Tennessee or wherever and do that same job as they're doing right now. That would turn the California economy so far upside down, it isn't even funny.
Well, there's another proposal that was just created in the legislature through an amendment, through a gut and amend, this week that would raise taxes on the highest earners. Now, we already have the highest marginal tax. We're at 13.3, which is the highest income tax of any of the 50 states. This bill would raise it to a top marginal rate of 16.8%. And this applies not just to people who are salaried billionaires. This applies to businesses that are sole proprietorships. And so the business income is reported as if it's individual income. So a business that earns $5 million a year will be taxed at 16.8%, state tax only, without federal tax. Now, how long is a business going to stay in California and put up with that?
Like the 12th of never. I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely driving me crazy on this thing, and I really don't. Amongst us, I think states like New York and California are really going to be hit the hardest when all this, when the aftermath of all the actions that have been taking place come about. But you got about 30 seconds. Tell them why it is really more important now than ever to join Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Go, Susan Shelley.
Because we're going to give you free yard signs for no on 15 and also another measure, no on 19. And this is the organization to join if you care about the future of California. It's only $15 a year, and you strengthen the voice of taxpayers in this state. We do lobbying, we do advocacy, we do information, we do media, we do every kind of activism that it's possible to do to raise the voice of taxpayers in this state. And it's really important, especially in this supermajority era where you don't have your views represented in Sacramento with any power. You need to be a member of Howard Jarvis to get your point across to your elected officials, because this is the best way to do it. And you are helping the future of California when you help to fight to protect Prop 13 and to fight to protect taxpayers. HJTA.org. Lots of great information there about the election, too. You'll find it very helpful.
You got it. We'll do it again next week. Thanks for being on, Susan Shelley.
Thanks, Roy.
I got it on Stephen. Yes, I paid taxes out the ass this year. He writes on the deal, and like everybody else, I mean, what? Why don't they just tax us? Which they're doing, I think, with others. Why don't they just tax us on the 100%, and we'll be done with it? Like probably Richard Hernandez, who says it's a bunch of propaganda. Well, Richard, call into the show one day, and we'll have a discussion about that. I would love nothing to have guys like you, guys and gals like you, of your side of the aisle, to come on and debate the issues. We'll more than welcome to call in, discuss it, get your point of view out. If you're right, you should have no problem putting your ideas out in the court of public opinion to see if they will hold muster on that. And but we don't duck anybody around here. We'll put anybody's opinion on there. Like, submit a column. I might post it on my site. Whatever works, whatever you feel comfortable with. But these little vignettes or one item deals, or that on social media, or the hashtags and the memes and the whole thing. Yeah, it's very easy to come up with like that. But, there's something called the real world. And as Susan Shelley said, what happens when the businesses start exiting even faster than they have before? What happens if the middle class keeps shrinking in California on that? You're seeing a $52 billion deficit right now. And what happens if it doesn't recover? What happens if you don't get a handle on the pensions and everything? That something ain't going to be pretty. And we've been through a lot. And if you want to keep it going, just you want to see what tyranny and oppression looks like, just keep going it the way you're going in the state of California, because you're going to find out quicker than you think. Look at how things quickly have turned around in the last 3 or 4 months here. You wouldn't have believed it. We'll be back tomorrow on the show with hopefully a Thankful Thursday. So until then, see ya.